Salam alaikum. There was a small delay, and during this delay, I'm not going to call it part two. I'm going to make this more of a full fledged silsila, lessons connected to one another, because the more I've been dwelling on the seriousness of this concept, I left you off with saying American Idol, didn't I? Well, now, this book, the reason it's been forbidden and it's been denied the publishing that it should have, because it's really quite a truthful book for those who have the eyes to see and the hearts to feel and to take a long look in the mirror at yourselves, okay? Now, when you're a new Muslim and they tell you all this about pictures and music and statues and just everything's forbidden, it's all like Western civilization has to just be torn down because, we worship, Mona Lisa. There's a picture we were all told to stare at and her eyes would follow us. Please. I was in Europe. I looked at all these things. Her eyes don't follow you. Then we were shown the naked statue of the young man called David. Well, we know him as a prophet, so we don't accept his being naked, and we think that's very wrong. But we were raised up to love that. And then, of course, in university, you had to take a course called Music Appreciation. And it was all the classical, Beethoven and Chopin and all these idols. And then I specifically had to take Renaissance art and architecture because that was the time slot that they gave me, and it was just completely naked. The book was, in those days, how many years ago was that? Oh my goodness, maybe 50. Cost $100. It's like this big with all these Renaissance art and architecture. Beautiful pictures, actually. I was not a Muslim, so I was looking at them in awe. I mean, Michelangelo, how could he do that? And Leonardo da Vinci, oh my goodness, they were genius, so we were told. What am I getting at here? I'm going to try to point out to you how this is basically true. And I'm not saying that you have to totally accept my point of view, that I believe it's all very dangerous because it's based on this exact subject. Ghulu, over-exaggeration. Now, I do think this will need at least 3 more lessons. I want to tell you something about what happened to me when I was a new Muslim, my first year married. And remember I said Sheikh Ismail would come to give me lessons. And one time he looked up on the top of this maktaba, it's a giant, like a bookshelf, and he saw a picture. He said, "Who's that up there?" I said, "Oh, that's my grandma on my dad's side. She's, I miss her so much. She was a wonderful grandma. I loved her." And he said, "Well, why? What was so great about her?" And I said, "Well, first of all, she had 13 children. And she would go to Mass every morning. She'd walk up the hill when the children were sleeping. And I always saw her with the rosary. She was always praying." He said, what was her name? I said, "Her name was Rose." What a beautiful name. He said, "Okay, all right. Well, I want you to take that down." You can imagine me. I said, Take down Grandma. Take down Grandma, why?" And he said, "Just take it down. I'll explain to you. It's better for you." That's what he would always say. Sheikh Ismail would always say, "But it's better for you." Well, I took it down, and I was sad, and I was holding on to it. It was in a gold frame, and I placed it off to the side. And I said, "So what's wrong with Grandma Rose up on her pedestal?" He said, "Well, the way you spoke about her, you loved her very much, and you have beautiful, fond memories. And she was Catholic, right?" I said, "Yeah, but she didn't know any better. And I was not a Muslim at the time. I mean, she died long before I became a Muslim." He said, "Yes, but when you have happy memories and you want to be happy and you want to feel happy, think about Allah. It's better for you." I can't say I really got it, but I got it enough to know that he was saying something very wise. And I did not return Grandma Rose up to the top shelf. But now I realize what he was worried about. I'm a new Muslim. I come from a big, powerful, rich family. And I was totally educated since the age of 4 in private Catholic schools. And the nuns were so powerful. You know, those nuns, I always compare my Qurani sisters to those nuns because they had quite a bit of influence on the young women and girls. Through their personalities, they were very smart, organized, very clean, their starched clothing. We looked up to them. We really did. And even some of us didn't like them. Well, I loved the nuns, but many of my friends hated the nuns. I don't know. It's just how it hits you, I guess, how Allah allows it to come into you. So why am I making this concept? Well, we do have a hadith. It's in the back of the book, but I'll tell it to you. Allah says the curses are upon those who make pictures, whether they painted or statues or whatever. The curses of Allah are on them, and when they are dying or dead and they come up for Judgment Day, Allah will say, let that idol, let that picture or that statue come alive right now. Tell it to come alive right now. I mean, I'm not giving you the exact, it's in this book, but I wasn't going to do that unit on pictures yet, but I'm getting the stage set for you to cope with what's in this book and why many people hate it and why many governments hate it and why I love it because I think it's true. Now, I'm not saying that I have been able to totally pull myself away from music. I have been able to, though, because I do believe that that is probably the most dangerous one for me because I was addicted to music and I grew up when we had the best music, Elvis Presley, the Beatles. I just know how dangerous it is. It takes you to another place. But as far as drama, literature, plays, films, I've pretty much avoided all the literature because I'm into Arabic so much now. But sometimes I'll do a film or two, maybe once a month. It affects your heart to a huge degree, especially on what you're interested in. I myself, I love historical drama and I love historical action films. I think about it all the time after I've watched it. It stays with me. Now, we know that the Quran cannot live in the same heart as music. It's a fact, it can't. So if you really want to memorize the Quran, you have to forego the music. Now, I'm not sure if it's a true hadith. Someone once said it was, but I didn't actually read it. Someone told me the Quran cannot live in the same heart as music. You have to choose which one it's going to be. So that's why I kicked music to the curb. I want to wrap this up right now, though, because I promised you I'm going to read you some hadith and some Quranic verses. Bear in mind that what we're doing here is smashing idols. We don't want human interference with the total worship that we should have for the sabab and the musabbab. Remember I said, if you want something to be there, then it's going to be there. And if it's not there, it's not there. So what you want to do is you want to prop up all the reasons that Allah's majesty and gifts and wisdom are with you and nobody else's, because those others are extremely powerful with Satan, who wants you to emulate them and to have them be the source of your happiness or your sadness. So if you feel I'm going off on a limb, I kind of had that feeling in the beginning, but the more you study and the more you read Quran, it's real. It's a real human condition, this idol worship, shall we say. Okay, now we're going to do what I was going to call part two, but I'm not. This is just going to be an ongoing study segment. And here it is. There's a lot. I told you there's a lot, but the last time we left off was when they were making idols and gave us the names. I don't want to say them again, but it was in Surah Nuh. Now we're going to get on to another hadith. This is Bukhari. And he has not given me the reference. It says, أخرج بخاري في تفسير باب سورة نوح. هذا أسماء رجال صالحين من قوم نوح فلما هلكوا أوحى الشيطان إلى قومهم أن أنسبوا إلى مجالسهم التي كانوا يجلسون فيها أنصابا. Okay, it means that there were a group of men who were very good men, and Noah's calm and his people. And when they died, the shaitan inspired his people to make likenesses of them and put them in their gatherings, in their group gatherings. وَسَمُّوهَا بِأَسْمَائِهِمْ, and to name these likenesses, whether they were statues, pictures, whatever, name them after the names of those good men. فَفَعَلُوا, and they did it. وَلَمْ تُعْبَدْ حَتَّى إِذَا هَلَكَ أُولَئِكَ. They were not worshipped until such time as that first group died. وَنُسِيَ الْعِلْمَ أُبِدَتْ. So when that first group died, the people forgot the knowledge. Actually, knowledge was forgotten. نُسِيَ الْعِلْمُ أُبِدَتْ. So when the knowledge was forgotten about the original reasons for this, they were worshipped. Now, these groups of men were worshipped. This was before Nuh. هذا أسماء رجال صالحين. And so that's how it started, and that's how it continues until today. Now, it doesn't say awha shaitan, the shaitan inspired them to do it. Allah uses the word waswasat shaitan. It's not wahy al-ilham. It's not a good inspiration. It's a bad inspiration. And then he's telling you about al-ansab, جمع نصب وهو كل ما ينسب من عصا أو حجر أو غيره. Anything built, you can say constructed, arranged, to be looked at and remembered. And then سموهم بأسمائهم, they were named, the names that they chose to name them. Here comes a really powerful one. I remember the first time I ever heard this. قال ابن قيم قال غير واحد من السلف. Now, perhaps I love the Salaf, so one of the Salaf said, لما ماتوا عقفوا على قبورهم. When these good men died, people sat around their graves. ثم صوروا تماثلهم. They drew pictures of their likenesses. ثم طال عليهم الأمد فعبدوهم. So it started with their gathering, how they used to gather, then reconstructing their likenesses, and then, end of story, they started to worship them. One Omar, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, oh, here's this hadith. The first time I read this, I was so, لا تطروني كما أطرت. See, it's still hard for me. I never heard this word before. لا تطروني كما أطرت النصارى ابن مريم. إنما أنا عبد وَقُولُوا عَبْدُ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولُهُ. It says, Prophet Muhammad commanded, do not overly praise me. This is tutruni. There's no tashkil, so we have to guess. Tutruni kama atarat. So the command here is, do not do this turh. Tutruni means don't do it to me. Kama atarat, like they did, who? The Nasara ibn Maryam. And then Prophet Muhammad says, I am a slave of Allah. So the first part is, don't over-exaggerate with me or about me, like the Christians over-exaggerated about Ibn Maryam, and that is Isa, Jesus. And then he continued to say, إِنَّمَا أَنَا عَبْدٌ فَقُولُوا عَبْدُ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. He said, I am just a slave of Allah, and call me that. And this is from Bukhari. Now, after this time, there were 1,000 years. If you're wondering how long it took for these people to get damaged, 1,000 years between Nuh and Adam was the first man. And it happened after they forgot the knowledge, dunillah, and they were not even, I guess, mentioning Allah. It was all about who they wanted to prefer to be their focal point. Okay, that's probably enough about that. Okay, let's go on to another. Oh, there's so much. I wish I could just do this with you for the rest of the year, but I don't want to. I want you to get the full story and only the details that you really need. Okay, here's another direct quote. This is from Nisa'i, the collection, Hadith Nisa'i, the collection of the Hajj. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إياكم وغلو فإنما أهلك من كان قبلكم الغلو. Prophet Muhammad said, beware of ghulu, because people before you were destroyed because of ghulu. And that is a hadith sahih. Trying to look for just the quotes here. Here's a hadith Muslim an Ibn Mas'ud. إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال. Oh, here's another one. Oh. حلق المتان. These words are so hard because they never come anywhere except here. You'll never hear these words ever outside of this hadith. حلق المتنطعون قال ثلاثة. So it says here that he said it 3 times, and it is in Hadith Muslim. So you have to find out what is al-mutanatta'un. It comes from tanata, and he gives you all the grammar that we don't really need. All we know is these mutanatta'un are destroyed. And then he gives similes, 3 more words, which are as difficult. المتنطع هو المتعمق المتقعر المتشدق. So now we have 3 difficult words to describe 1 difficult word. سواء كان في كلام أو في أفعال. They all mean to exaggerate, and whether it be in words or in deeds. فهو هالك. The person who does this is destroyed. Okay, now he's going to give us the meanings of these words. I already know what they mean, but so hard. It's so hard to like sift through and find what you need. Let's see this general meaning here. تنطع بالأفعال كذلك أيضا قد يودي إلى إعجاب أو إلى الكبر. It means people who show off, either in words or deeds, to show people how great they are and how better they are than anyone else. That's why Allah says in this hadith, halaka al-muttanatta'un. It also says, التنطع أيضا في مسائل الدينية. You can also do this in religious issues. And it يشبه الغلو فيها, and it resembles this over-exaggeration. And it can be used, believe it or not, by religious people when they're preaching to make themselves stand out from the fray, from the average person. Either whether it be in their eloquence or their style or their wide vocabulary that the common man doesn't understand. And it said that the Sahaba were أشد الناس حرصا على علم, and also فيهم رسول الله الذي عانوا من الإجابة على أسئلة ما ليس عند غيره من الناس مهما بلغ علمه. It's saying that people who answer questions about in the religion have to be very careful of what they say to people and make sure that they know how they're saying it, in what style and format they're saying it, so that there can be no excess and so that the people cannot misunderstand any of this, because it's going to be sabab al-halak. This is why some of the shuyukh don't want to speak Fusha. They say the people don't understand it. We have to speak Amiyah, the slang. We have to make sure that they understand. I don't like that. I say no. Why don't you make sure that you teach them proper Arabic? That's a huge subject. It's one of my main complaints about Egypt, is the people can't even speak their own language or read their own language properly. Okay, now I'm going to stick to, I still have like 10 more pages. It also mentions here that you have to know that the shaitan بما تأول إليه البدعة ولو حسن قصد فاعل. You have to be careful in your worship that you're not committing bid'ah, even though you have the intention of what you are doing, that you want to please Allah with it. Don't invent new things, because when you invent new things, he says here, the bid'ah is sabab al-kufr. As soon as you start inventing, and one of the points here that is often brought up, I might have to do a third lesson because we're never going to get. One of the points that is often brought up are the Sufis. You know, they do this whirling dance, and they love to do it for the tourists because it looks kind of cool. You know, they have this big skirt, and they whirl and whirl and whirl so that you can barely even see that there's humans. They're just twirling, literally twirling, and then you can't even distinguish where the skirt begins and ends and the human form, and it's accompanied by all of this music and chanting about hu, 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 hu. It means huwa. So they say that they're praising Allah in this. No. Prophet Muhammad didn't like it, and the Sahaba never did it. So why would you think that this is praising Allah? Why would you think this is something you ought to do? It reminds me of the early Christians didn't use paintings and saints and all of that. I call it magic. It's bid'ah. And so when they started out doing it, it just exploded. And then it ends up in the Catholic Church, where if you walk in a Catholic church, which I hope you never will, it is filled. You think you're in a museum of art. You think you're in Rome looking at the I don't even want to describe it. It bothers me because I did do it before I was a Muslim, and I was fascinated. You go in that Sistine Chapel, oh, that's where they choose the new pope, and you look up at all of this artwork. You know, they told you Michelangelo did it all lying on his back because he was up on a scaffold and he couldn't go to sleep and he didn't want to come up and down, so he would just lie there and paint, looking up at the ceiling. And they had all this drama surrounding art. It was incredible. And we all had to go. I mean, it's kind of like a wajib. You know, it's us, like when we go to Mecca, we want to see the Kaaba and we want to make the pilgrimage. And, well, your pilgrimage was to art museums. Some people like opera and ballet as well. You can add all that in there. You see, this is a very comprehensive subject, which is why I'm going on, and we've almost reached the second half hour. Because it is a very rich and varied problem. And it has to do now with the phones, the AI, and all of this. You can literally get an idea and just, I don't do it, but my friends tell me, you can talk it into your new, what's the word? I don't remember the words because I hate it, but you can say, please draw me a picture of myself as an Indian princess in the forest. And in a split second, you'll have it. Or you could imagine a fantasy of any sort, and they'll do it for you immediately. You can also ask them questions that you have in school that you're supposed to do a research paper on, and they'll give you more than you could ever have found a year ago in your own research, whether it be in encyclopedias or in Wikipedia or whatever. Forget you now, you human. You've been replaced. Literally, you've been replaced. How do you like that? Do you feel that we're moving forward in so-called civilization, or we are becoming robots? Which we are. Which is one reason I'm musammim. Sometimes I don't think of English. I'm musammim that I'm going to finish this book. I'm determined to finish this book before I die, because whether you accept it all or not, you'll feel something. You might not like all of it, but you're going to know that there's something here. This is the body shaming. This is the anorexia. This is what it ends up to with the girls, where they don't feel they're pretty enough. And now with the men, with the foolish bodybuilding and the steroids, and it's become absurd. And it's wrong. And it does not lead you to happiness. It leads you to a sense of unfulfilled fantasy. Oh, I wish I could have. Could I? Maybe one day? You know, the new thing now is, because they've realized there's problems, now they have new stuff about wedding gowns. And you can see the most beautiful wedding gowns from all over the world. It's not just the white gowns anymore. And you can dream about that and spend, probably way more than you're able or that your dad is able. And then there'll be arguments and, well, I'm the only daughter, aren't I worth it? And all that stuff. And then the other husband's family feels they can't compete. Then you have to invite all of the guests, and your poor dad has to pay for this. By the way, Islamic wedding, according to the Salaf, Prophet Muhammad said the best marriage is the one that is least costly. Can you imagine that? And my mom used to say, the bigger and splashier the wedding, the shorter will be the marriage. Imagine my mom said that. We're going to end at that now, because we're going to be 30 minutes in a second. And then I'll be back, and I'm going to do some more. And I'll focus on something just a little bit different, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.